Welcome to Roar Healing Stories. I'm your host, Ellen Line. A quick note before we get started today, there are a few moments in today's conversation where the audio quality gets a little distorted, choppy, hard to hear. It happens at the beginning, and then there are a few moments throughout the conversation where that happens. It does not last for very long. Any of the times that it happens, sound quality will come back. All right, let's dive in. Hey y'all, welcome to Roar Healing Stories. My guest today is Krissy, and I'm going to have her tell you about herself. Krissy.
Hi, I am a 49-year-old mom, single mom of three. I work for a nonprofit in the environmental field, and I am a program manager for the organization. And most of my work is geared towards improving water quality and just engaging landowners to implement practices that improve and protect water quality. I don't know. My children are ages almost 22, almost 20, and 9 in July. So 8.5, 8 3/4. And so a big range there, lots of different life phases that I'm dealing with right now.
Yeah.
My journey have pretty much stayed local to where I've grown up. So yeah, just kind of a local hometown girl, I guess.
I love that. That's the best short bio. We have known each other for a really long time, decades at this point. And when I was young, Krissy, you were definitely a mentor for me. And I love that we've gotten to stay in touch and see each other heal and grow. So I'm really excited for our conversation today. And to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about your healing journey?
Yeah. And, I think for me, it's interesting because you have seen two phases of my healing journey. And in some ways too, the evolution of Ellen had the first part of my healing journey, you were at a different phase in your life. And it was I remember when I told you what was going on in my life and just how scared I was, because I knew, I was just oh, I love these 3 girls, because it was your younger sister and friend that was part of our group at the time. And I was just, out of everyone that I had told what had happened in my life, that was probably one of the scariest conversations, because I was just oh my gosh. But I think it was also a really good conversation, because the 3 of you offered me so much grace at that moment, and just this but we love you. Okay, that's what I needed to hear at the time. And so that was a really rocky, and I guess just to share with the guest on the podcast, to give a little context, I was Ellen's youth leader at a church, and what I had gone through in my life was that I had an affair. And so my first marriage was very rocky. Well, it ended in divorce, but we did try to work on things for a year, maybe. And then I left and went out as a single mom and went on my own. And just even that journey, just being in the conservative Christian community was an extremely hard healing journey, because I was just not only struggling with just my own feelings about what had happened in my marriage, but then also having that religious component added on top of that, and just complicating the healing and complicating what I thought I should be doing, and what I thought I needed to find forgiveness and grace, and what I thought I needed to do to be a good Christian. And so that was a really hard phase. And even after my first ex and I had decided to get a divorce, there was still a lot of just conflict within my family, and a lot of just not feeling good enough to sit around the family table, and And not saying that it was necessarily the family that was putting that on me. I think there is definitely a component that I put that on myself, and, take responsibility for that. But interestingly enough, now, went through all of that, met and married and had my second marriage, had my third child. And then most recently, that marriage ended in 2023. So that also was just an extremely painful journey. And I feel like that's the thing more recently that I'm healing from. And so with each one of these like life changes, like there's been like, I feel like I've healed from one thing through the dissolve of my first marriage. And then, now I'm healing different areas of my life and becoming more of a whole person. It's not, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't want to have a second marriage fail to learn the lessons. But, I don't know. I mean, there's value in the learning. And so, so that's probably the most recent trauma and probably the healing that I will focus on more talking about. But I think for me, the interesting thing is that I've actually found healing with my family and made some amends through the second divorce, like from the first, like some of the baggage and ick from the first marriage and from my affair have we've been able to talk about that more actually as a result, like from the second marriage ending. So it's just been kind of this. And the end of my first marriage, like I was not supported by my family. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of hurt, and understandably so. The end of my second marriage, there was a lot of family support, and there was a lot of honestly, just relief that the marriage was ending, and just, I guess that's probably about as much as I want to say.
Okay.
Knowing who will be listening later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a lot of support from my family, and I felt very loved and cared for.
Yeah.
Through the loss of a second marriage.
Yeah. Do you think that change was because of shifts within like your family's understanding or heart or their sense of like maybe what's right and wrong? Or do you think, because you mentioned there was this maybe part of this internal feeling of not good enough, that like, was the shift more them or you or both?
I think it was a little bit of both. And, definitely my mom has said to me twice that she regrets how they treated me the first time. And she's like, and just that she's like, I didn't handle it well. And I was like, Mom, I didn't handle it well either. Like, none of us knew how to handle this. Like, we had never been through this before. And, again, to add context to it, my brother also had an affair and his first marriage ended. And so my brother was treated very differently through the end of his marriage and how the family, and, like in some ways I'm like, well, I guess I was the guinea pig. And, but I do believe that there were lessons learned, and that, my family, saw, there was just a hurt, and that, just more of an effort to make sure that my brother felt loved and cared for. Because even if you are the person who is the one that cheated, there, like, for me, like, there were things going on in that marriage that I stepped out. Like, that's why I stepped out. And there were areas that, again, clearly needed healed, and in me and in that marriage. And so, I think as someone who has been the person that has has cheated, like when I hear of it, it breaks my heart. But at the same time, I understand that both parties need care.
Yeah.
Like they both need care, and
Yeah.
it's redeemable and it's forgivable, and it's sad and it's unfortunate and not ideal, obviously, but that person still needs love and care, and they need to know that they are cared for.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like there's like people who study relationships and marriage have studied this, and there's something, it's like a ridiculously high amount of like affairs in relationships happen because like I think we have this narrative of like everyone who has an affair is just like this awful cheater person who's so bad and just like selfish. But it's like what is actually true is that in like 75 or 80% of marriages is that the infidelity is more of a symptom of deeper issues in the relationship, that there are needs that aren't being met or like behavior that is happening that is like trying to be redeemed outside of the relationship, right? And I think it's made so much worse because we have all of this like kind of baggage around like like patriarchy sort of has this like male entitlement to like women's everything. And so we see it like, oh my gosh, infidelity, that's the worst possible thing. And it's like even worse when it's the woman who is cheating, because that goes against sort of like our patriarchal norms. And so, yeah, it's like, I can imagine and I can understand why your family was like having a hard time. And at the same time, I really, really, really agree with you that like everybody here is hurting, right? Like it's not in the large majority of cases, people aren't just like out here having affairs willy-nilly.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely wasn't, and again, like I said, I've learned lessons through that, and just that, like, okay, well, I have, growing up, I was very flirtatious. I was always, like looking for male attention. And so, that was something that I was, after the affair, I was just kind of like, okay, that's something that needs to be healed. And like going into my next relationship, I need to be aware of that and make sure that like, that I'm not just flirting to flirt, and I need to be respectful of other people's relationships and, like make sure that I am not crossing boundaries. And so, I think just having that knowledge too, like that really helped moving forward. Like I do need to be cautious with my actions and how I engage with men, and especially married ones. So sometimes it's harmless. They're very secure in their marriage, but other people are, it's not like the way that affair developed, I didn't intentionally set out to like do this. And I didn't intentionally set out to have this affair with that specific person. Like it just happened because we were both in situations, and the more we shared, the closer we got, and just opened doors. And so, but also back to the asking about why my family was more supportive. I do think, honestly, like it was helpful that like the second marriage did not end because of an affair, so that was helpful as well. But my family did see things in the relationship that they were concerned about, and they did see unhealthy patterns, and so I think overall they were concerned for my mental and emotional health and just my household. And they actually were kind of relieved more than anything when that marriage dissolved, because they, like I just wasn't myself. I don't think they weren't the person that they knew, and they were observing things that they didn't like. So I think that was part of it as well too. just that they were going to make sure that, because I did take it hard. It was a really hard thing. Because like I said, I went through one divorce and it was shameful and I felt guilty enough over that one. And then to just go into another marriage, committing to forever. And then the way that they left and the way that they even the way that they told me they were leaving, it was just all really, really hurtful. And just very much felt discarded, just very much felt like I didn't mean anything to them. And so just experiencing that, my family just really rallied around me because that was hurtful and very painful to experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm having a question and let me ask it. And if you don't want to answer it, then because you said that you probably want to focus more on your more recent healing journey. So I don't want to sidetrack us too much. And I will cut this out if you don't want to answer this question, we'll just skip over it. I know for me and in my marriage, I wouldn't say that I intentionally hid how bad things were at times, but there was a lot of well, let me put on a brave face. Maybe we were just fighting in the car, but now we're going to go be with friends and I want to have fun with friends. So let me pretend that fight just didn't happen. And so I guess I'm kind of curious if your family understood some of the things that were not working for you in your first marriage. If some of that was kind of hidden from them and they saw more of it in the second marriage. And so that they were able to be more supportive the second time around, because you were maybe being more vulnerable, or were maybe the dynamics were different in those relationships in terms of what wasn't working for you.
Yeah. And that's a really good question too. And I think too, a lot of the probably the hurt of the dissolve of the first marriage was that everybody really did love my first ex. And so, there was just a sadness because he is just fun. He is funny. He just really his personality fit well with our family. And so there was just this general love for him. And, but I think even in that marriage too, I wasn't happy, but I just was well, I'm not going to complain about this because there are so many worse things he could be doing. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm not emotionally satisfied. There's kind of some things happening here that are not ideal, but he could be beating me. He could be out drinking all night. He could be, you know what I mean? Why am I complaining about this kind of a thing? You know? And also again, too, just going back to the biblical principles, I was very much involved in church at that time and very much just kind of okay, but a good wife, blah, 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 and so, there was definitely that. Yeah. And we didn't fight a lot. There wasn't arguing, there wasn't yelling. And so I think that too really added to this whole, well, he doesn't yell, he doesn't get mad at me. We, should I really be complaining about this? I hid a lot of stuff in my second marriage too. And again, just from this position of, okay, well, I just don't want to complain to my family because I think I sensed that they really didn't love him as much as ex number one. But I always just attributed that to, well, it was him. It was ex number one and everybody loved him and nobody's going to live up to that expectation. And that sort of an attitude about it. But then when the marriage broke down and I actually started to have the conversations, it was more no, Krissy, we saw that he was X, Y, and Z. We see that you are doing most of this thing and that thing and this thing, and he's off doing those things and he's not present and he's not there. And, we saw you giving up things to make him happy. We saw you sacrificing things to keep peace. Yeah. And, you know, like, and so that very much too has just really helped my healing journey in that, like, because there are so many times where I'm like, what I went through in that second marriage, you know, like, it was highly toxic. Like, it was extremely toxic, a lot of the behavior. And I have done a lot. And this is it feels like it's a buzz term, and I hesitate to even bring it up. And you probably know the word I'm going to say, but I've done a lot of research on narcissistic tendencies, and he checks a lot of the boxes for me. Like, every time I read through the symptoms and the like traits, it's like, check. And so, but I still have a lot of just like guilt and hesitation to say that I was narcissistically abused, because I'm like, was it? And, but I just refer to it as there were highly toxic behaviors. Yeah. I was in individual therapy for most of our marriage, and it definitely felt like the more I healed and the more tools I put in my toolbox, the harder our marriage became. You know, like, I'm trying to exert these healthy behaviors, and all I'm getting is like pushback on it and like resistance to it. We were in couples therapy for 5 years, and that just deteriorated. It's like, we aren't getting better. And in fact, we're getting worse. And that, you know, I feel like that too was just probably should have been a telltale sign that, like, it was his suggestion to go to couples therapy. And I consistently believe that the effort was so he could drag me to a therapist and have the therapist tell me how wrong I was, and, you know, support him.
Well, and I think that's a really common thing that happens in couples therapy. I think especially with a therapist who's not like actively feminist, right? Because I think that, and like, this is something that's kind of standing out to me hearing you talk about both of your relationships. I think there's sort of this narrative that like the right thing for a woman to do is to have a relationship with a man, and that it's worth like sacrificing so much to make that work. And that's kind of the most important thing. And it ends up that like we end up putting up with so much bullshit, right? Like, whether it's like my needs aren't being met, or this like division of household labor is not equitable, or that like this person, and then sometimes it's as bad as this person is like obviously mistreating me, and we still are like, but I should probably figure out how to stay here, right? Because the cultural narrative is so strong. And so then it's like, often what happens is folks go to a couples therapist hoping for support. And it is that dynamic where the couples therapist is also kind of in that script of like, oh, okay, well, if you, woman in the relationship, just figure out how to like navigate this person's insane expectations that are like in part probably because of their wounds, and in part also because of this like cultural patriarchal mythology that we all adhere to, then you'll be happy, right? And it's just not fair, and it's not right, and it's not healthy.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. And it definitely, you know, even after, you know, mourning that relationship too, like where I was just like, it's so like, it's such a mind bender, because I'm just like, I was so unhappy. And, you know, like, I think some of the signs of that, of just the stress that I was holding, and just like the constant state of like fight or flight and like all of that being on edge all the time. Like I was at the heaviest weight that I had ever been outside of my 3 pregnancies. I couldn't lose the weight. Nothing I was doing. Like if I tried to eat less, it didn't help. If I tried to exercise, it didn't help. Like nothing was helping. And within the first month of my second ex leaving, like I dropped 5 pounds. And I mean, that was with like, I was doing dry January, but also like, it just was like, okay, like my body's releasing some stuff. Even through all of that though, I'm like, this was awful. And like every day I felt like I was walking on eggshells, and like it was getting to the point where it was just kind of like, I could feel myself like brace up and tense when I heard his car in the alley, and like, just like, okay, put on a happy face. Like, here he comes, like finishing his cigarette on the back porch, and then he's going to be in, and like, all right, hey, how was your day? Even though like, I didn't even want to hear it. Like I didn't, and yeah. And there was just like a lot of behavior. One lesson that I learned from my second ex is that when somebody shows you where you fall on their priority list, you believe them. And if you aren't high, like you need to get out. You need to like if they want to be somewhere else doing something else with someone else, let them. And because I could have saved myself so much heartache and just so much. I could have saved myself so much. And I don't know. That's one of the things where I'm kind of like, okay, like as I'm dipping my toe in the water of like relationships, I think that's one of the things that I'm just constantly looking out for. Like, what are you willing to invest in this relationship, and how far are you willing to go? And is this not even like, and I'm not asking that they're all in and I'm just sitting back and reaping the benefits of like that, like being put on a pedestal. That's not what I'm talking about. But like, I want to see some effort on your part, and I want to see some investment, and,
yeah.
Like if I'm not feeling it, like, okay, thanks for letting me know.
Yeah. 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 And you had enough experience now to know, and you're like, it seems like secure enough in yourself that like you can walk away from that or pull back, like appropriately protect yourself if that is what's happening. But I think so often, and like, for all the reasons that you described, like whether it's sort of like our religious, what we're brought up in as like being like the religious norm, or whether it's just like the patriarchal conditioning, there's so much pressure to stay even when you are the bottom of the priority list, or yeah.
And I think like for me too, one thing that I've really just started to think about a lot is just, and I know when I say this, I think it will ring a bell too. It's just that like, what relationship habits am I modeling for my children? And, that's something that I've had to go to both of my older children and just say, like, I have not modeled healthy behavior for you. And I'm sorry that I've done that. And, just through my daughter's journey more recently, like the one thing that I have been telling her is just that, like, I'm proud of you for how you've been handling this relationship situation. And you are so much further ahead than I was at your age. I wish I would have had the security in myself that she's exhibiting right now. Like it took me, I'm 49. Like it took me till now to be like, okay, like,
yeah,
I don't feel like I'm being treated the way I should be treated. Like, thank you. Next.
yeah.
Still, like, I mean, I still have to work on that, like I'm not perfected it, but I also just, I'm at this stage in my life where I'm kind of like, whoever comes into my life, they need to bring it, because I am a single mom. I am a single income household. I am paying my bills. I am, I am providing for 3 children. Now, granted, 2 of them are older and like not necessarily here. Like I would be empty nesting it if I didn't have my youngest. And I'm providing for my youngest 50% of the time. But like, she's FaceTimed me 4 times this week. So even though she's not here when that happens, I'm still an emotional resource for her. I'm still, like on for her when she's reaching out in that way. And so like, I don't know. It's just, I was in this position when I met my second ex, where I was kind of like, I'm throwing theme parties. I had my own house that I bought as on a single income. Like I was really content. And I've often reflected back on that and been like, why did I think I needed to add him to my life? Like my life was like awesome at that point. And I was like, why did I add him? And so very candid, but yeah. Like, and I think at this point now, I'm just like, whatever. I do have a 9-year-old and she does need my attention. And like, that is really where anything that comes into my life, I can't take my focus away from that. Like it can't take my focus away. I still need to be a mom 100% of the time when she's here and taking care of her. And so that has been like a very different approach for me. I had mentioned my delve into a relationship and I have been very intentional about keeping it compartmentalized and separate until, and I liked doing that because I learned that lesson. I'm not going to bring somebody in until I feel confident they're going to be a fixture in my life. And because I don't want to introduce and create bonds that may not last. Like that's really important for me too at this point.
Yeah.
And, not really knowing like how they're going to show up for my children and even like impressing upon them that they need to, because I don't need dads for my children. Like my children have dads, they're involved in their lives. I'm not looking for somebody to come in and necessarily be that for my children. So
yeah. What was that?
I said just being conscious of that, of just, like not forcing things on people either and making sure they're comfortable.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, kind of hearing your evolution. Have there been like moments or memories? And like part of the whole thing of this podcast is that healing can look so many different ways, right? And so like, of course we go to therapy and of course that's a healing space for us. But then there's so much more to life that I think can become part of our healing story. So I'm curious for you if there are specific moments or memories that you can think of that maybe weren't those more traditional, like I was in therapy and I had an insight, but like I was on a hike in the woods and I had an insight, or like, this conversation with a family member or a friend, or like whatever. Yeah, just curious to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, and this will kind of be maybe like a longer bit of a story. Yeah. A year ago on March 8th, my second ex, he left in January of 23. Initially very hurt, kind of cut off communication. And then he had something traumatic happen in his life and I provided support for that. So we were back on better terms. Things were happening between us. We were still married at that time. And like, although he was moved out, like, he was just taking advantage of the fact that I was still emotionally attached and, getting what he could, let's just from that. And, meanwhile, like, he was not being forthright and not being clear on, the fact that what he was doing on his side. And, so found out that I figured out that he was seeing someone, and I caught him in the act of being on a date. And so I was like, okay, dude, like, done again.
Mm-hmm.
But that, that fizzled pretty quickly. So then again, like, weaseled his way back in. Mm-hmm. And then went through the same pattern all over again. And then, March 8th of last year, which I guess at the end of January, I kind of like was tired of it because he was taking advantage and like using me to take care of our daughter on his custody weeks. But when it was my custody week, well, he had plans and he couldn't be bothered to like spend time together, or, like, we'd do things as a family on his custody weeks. But then on my custody weeks, he was too busy doing all the things he wanted to do when he could be single. And so, at the end of January last year, I just said, you know what? You want to be a single dude, you get to be a single dad, and you get to experience what that's like. Not helping anymore, figure it out. And honestly, Ellen, like, at that point, I had really kind of thought my absence would be noticed and, felt. And instead, he found someone else, and apparently had been looking for someone else all along, like the whole time. And I will never know the truth of like how long he had been talking to this person or whatever, because he compartmentalized things too, but in a way so that he could lead a double life, and so I am sure that he will tell a very different version of his side. And again, I'm telling you, my version is that he was not forthright and honest with me about a lot of things and took advantage of that. And so then on March 8th, the night before my birthday, he told me he was seeing someone and that I knew her professionally. Yeah.
I am making a shocked face for the viewers, the listeners at home.
And, work had been the one place where I could go and I was thriving because I could set everything aside and I could just be me. And I could work and I could focus on that. And then, and then he had to ruin that for me. Like, that had to get ruined for me. So the celebration this year of overriding that horrible memory and just Max coming home, that was such a joyous day. That was just such a way for me to be well, F you.
Yeah.
I get to celebrate something now on this day, and you don't get to own it. That memory doesn't get to own it anymore. And so I would say that was definitely a non-traditional way of healing, and just framing it that way and telling myself, no, today now is happy. Today is now, a good thing. I think the other moment that I can really reflect on as just a shift in my healing journey. I was pretty messed up then. I mean, pretty just awful, crying a lot, hurting a lot, just kind of what's wrong with me, why, if I had been different, if I had been this kind of person, if I had taken up this hobby, he would love me. And those are all lies. Like, they're all lies. Like, the person that he is, he's going to do the same thing to her. And it might take a little bit longer, and it might, but irregardless, even if he doesn't, what he was with me was toxic and unkind. And he was not a good partner, and he was not a good, he just wasn't good. Yeah. And so, but part of then the healing journey was I had a very unsuccessful hot minute with Match, because I was kind of like, this was I literally had this conversation with my whole self where I was like, if he can get somebody to date him on Tinder, certainly I can find somebody on Match. No, I could not. And I could show you the profiles of the people that were liking me, that were trying to match with me. And I'm like, what in the world? What have I put out into the world that these are the people that are like? So then I was like, I think I need to heal a little bit more before I even this wasn't even a healthy reason to try and find someone. So I'm out. And another friend or a coworker was kind of like, have you ever heard of Meetup? And I was like, no. And she's like, oh yeah, you can get on Meetup. It's this app, and you can find groups of things to do. And I was like, that's what I need. It's just because I've been hiking alone, and I had been, which creates all kinds of problems for women, but also, I was just kind of like, I'm tired of hiking alone, and it'd be nice to have friends to hike with. And so I got the app, and it's still very frustrating because I cannot seem to ever find an activity that lines up for me to want to work on, to do. And I was on this app, and there's this really cool group in Philly that I'm just like, gosh darn it, why don't I live in Philadelphia? That looks amazing. And so there was finally one weekend that they were doing a camping trip, and it lined up. And I actually did it because I had met somebody else on Meetup. They just started messaging me back and forth. And I actually went on the trip to Phil a weekend because I was scared that this person was going to try to get me to go on a date with them a second time, because I did go on one date, and I very much was kind of no. So I actually just put this weekend, paid my money to go on this weekend, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. But then the day of the trip, I started to have super just anxiety about it, because I'm I don't know anyone. I don't know what I'm walking into. They're very much creating stereotypes of what kind of people might be there, and what happens if they're all just snotty or mean or pretentious, and I don't like any of them. And I was like, well, I'll take a book, and I will just hang my hammock up, and I will read in my hammock all day. That's what I'll do. But so then my stomach started to hurt. And so then I started to leave later than I wanted to, and I was going to get there late. And I was still having a lot of anxiety about it. And then I got to this point on 81. I was driving there, and I was, when I was in youth group, my youth group had gone on a whitewater rafting trip at Hickory Run State Park. And I had to go up late, and I went with a friend of mine. And the whole way there, we were listening to the Beastie Boys' Ill Communication album, because it had just come out.
Yeah.
And so I got to this point, it was the 81 split with 78. And I was all those memories came flooding back to me of being an 18-year-old girl, and going on this rafting trip with my friend, and just driving 81. And I still love Ill Communication. It's one of my favorite albums probably ever. And I was just I'm 18 again. I'm 18 again. I get to go. I get to make new friends. I get to be who I want to be in this environment. I get to show up and nobody knows my story. Nobody knows how heartbroken I've been. Nobody knows anything about me. Like, I can show up however I want.
Yeah.
And like, that was so empowering. Like, that flip was just like, wait a second. Like, I can be whoever I want now.
Yeah.
I don't have to fit into this. I don't have to make someone else happy. I don't have to make myself smaller in my house, in my own house. And I can show up and be the person I want to be. And that just, then I got excited. Then the whole way there, like, I turned on the Beastie Boys. I started listening to Ill Communication. I think I rolled up listening to them. I don't even know. But it was just like a lot of fun. And you know, we did, it was fun. And then met someone as soon as I pulled in, and just had like a lot of fun the whole weekend. And from there, like, I think that just really helped a lot in the framing of it, of just this, like, you know, like, I have weeks at a time to myself because we split custody 50-50, and I can do whatever I want with that time and go places and do things and make new friends. And I don't have to stay inside this box. And I can find the things that I love and I'm passionate about, and I can do that now. And I think that was really healing, because you know, there was a frustration in my marriage where I was told, like, you can do things for yourself. All you have to do is ask. And then I would ask, and then it would turn into a, like, we'll find somebody else to take care of our daughter for us. I have this planned. I'm going to do this. If you want to do something, ask your sister to take care of her. Ask your mom to take care of her. Can't your mom take care of her? So those are the things that my family was seeing too. But yeah. So, but you know, the person that I did meet, one of the things too that that has been helpful in my healing journey is that, you know, I think a lot of times I would tell my story, and I would tell that story of what happened and how I was treated. And I would want people to pity me for that. And be like, oh, they're so awful. Like, I can't believe they did that to you. And so, you know, I mentioned I like made a friend on that trip. And as I was like being vulnerable for the first time and like kind of sharing with him like what my story was and what had happened. And I kind of got mad at him, honestly, because at the end of the story, like, he was just like, yeah, but you guys were divorced. And I was like, and that was the first time somebody had said that to me. And I was like, you know what? I had to sit with that. And I said to myself, he's right. I have to take responsibility for my part in what happened there. And the fact was, yeah, we were divorced. And I have to show love for that person that I was at that time, because really what she was looking for, she was still looking for that validation. She was still looking for that acceptance. Like, she was still living in hope that she had grown enough and shown that she could be a different person in the relationship, and that, you know, that through all of those things, ex number 2 could have seen the value and worth of her. And again, like, that was just never going to happen, you know? And so, because he just didn't value me. I'm not sure he knows people, but
yeah.
So that's definitely one thing that I have worked on, is just like, when I have these feelings of like being angry at myself or just having anger, because anger still does come up a lot. It's just reminding myself I didn't deserve to be treated the way I was, even if I was choosing to be in that situation. That still doesn't justify the behavior. It doesn't justify the lies that I was told. It doesn't justify that. I have to tell myself, like, you didn't deserve that. And also, like, I still love you, like, I still, like, it's okay. Like, here's what you were doing. Here's what you were trying to do. And we don't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. I think that all makes so much sense. And I hear this like kind of evolution of sort of being in this place where it's like, I need this like external validation. And I think that's like, again, like our own wounding mixed with like all of the cultural messaging, right? Where it's like, I don't feel worthy unless I have this kind of relationship in my life, right? And then like through both of your marriages and like the lessons you learned, and now you're in this place where you can be so compassionate with those parts of you. And like, it's like, okay, yeah, it makes sense that was showing up. And it makes sense that like I was staying in this situation that did not serve me. And now because you're able to kind of like offer yourself the compassion and the kindness and the validation that you've been looking for externally for so long, it's like you're able to make really different choices, and you feel really, it's like, I feel better.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's true. Yeah, definitely. Like, it has been really helpful to teach myself how to self-soothe more and to be better at that.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, like, I'm angry and I need to get that out.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, it is helpful to just kind of be like, talk to myself and talk myself back off that ledge and just be more aware of it.
Yeah.
Be more aware of like, why is this coming up? Like, asking those questions. Why is this coming up now? Why am I feeling this?
Yeah. Yeah. When we're able to like kind of take that step back and have some curiosity about like what's going on, right? It's like, to me, I'm like, the ingredients for healing are like curiosity, compassion, kindness, you know, for our own internal experience and for what happened to us. And like when we're with someone, like those qualities that we can offer someone else are like tend to be healing, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I just love that that's been part of your journey here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are kind of getting into the wrap up zone. Any last little bits that you feel like you would like to share from our time today?
I don't think so.
Okay. Krissy has really graciously offered to be in touch with maybe folks who resonated with her story. I will be sharing her email address in the show notes. Is there anything that you want to say about that, Krissy?
I'd love to hear from anyone who did, like, maybe my story touched them or benefited them in some way. I think that would be really awesome. But no haters, though.
No haters, no trolls.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for asking me.
Hello, this is Outro Ellen. Thanks so much for listening today. If you're interested in hearing more healing stories, please subscribe on the platform where you're listening or join my newsletter, Find Your Fierce, on Substack. If you subscribe on Substack, you'll get an email every time I publish an episode, so you'll never miss one. The link to Substack is in the episode description. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can head over to Find Your Fierce and join as a monthly, annual, or founding subscriber. Paid subscribers make it possible for these stories to be shared far and wide, and you'll get access to bonus letters, episodes, and events that are just for subscribers. If you want to go above and beyond, please leave us a rating or a review on the platform where you're listening, or share this episode with a friend, frenemy, lover, family member, boss, colleague, or someone who needs it. I'm sending you the love and peace you need to be your best self today and every day. Audio hugs. Bye.